In this section, we are going to talk about the different articles of clothing that the Prophet ﷺ used to wear, and they are therefore part of Islamic culture. And that means that you, in turn, can wear it without anybody bothering you because they shouldn't, because you're Muslim, and therefore you are entitled to wear whatever the Prophet ﷺ used to wear. We will begin with the head dress that the Prophet ﷺ used to wear, and that is in English a turban, in Arabic, amama. And the amama is made up of two parts, a very long piece of cloth and a hat. We also call that a kufi hat, and it comes in so many different variants. I will try to present as many different variants of the kufi hat as I can. So the Prophet ﷺ used to wear the kufi hat and used to wrap his head in a specific way. And he would either wear the wrappings, the turban alone, or he would wear the hat alone, or he would wear them both together. And when the Sahaba were describing how he looked when he entered Mecca for the conquest of Mecca, he was wearing a black turban, which is cool, and he had the two ends coming down between his shoulder blades. Additionally, there are many brothers who wear the amama, the wrapping, the turban, who are scholars. So you will find that the scholars in Egypt, the scholars in Lebanon, the scholars in Palestine, and in Syria, they wear the turban in a specific way, not necessarily in the way that the Prophet ﷺ used to wear it, but they have their own sort of cultural way of wearing it, and it is sort of synonymous with them. We move on to the kufi hat just by itself, because the kufi hat is very, very particular to Muslims, much like the hats of the Jews, those little caps that cover their heads. They call them yarmukl, and they call them kippas, and they call them all kinds of, I guess they have multiple names for them. But for Muslims, we wear something called a kufi hat, and it comes in many variants. Some of them are cylindrical. It's like a cylinder that is cut off. And some of them are very particular. They look like they've been embroidered, like somebody crocheted them. And in many cases, I guess they were crocheted because they have different patterns. I remember I had one on when I went to Umrah. And obviously, in Umrah, you kind of shave your head. And I got a sunburn, and I had the outline of the hat, the crochet outline of the hat on my bald head. It was glorious. Next, we have the most favored article of clothing to the Prophet ﷺ, which was the thawb or the qamis. And the thawb comes in many, many variants because there's the long sleeve variant, there's a short sleeve variant, there are variants from North Africa, variants from the Gulf area, which is obviously Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, etc. They have their own variant. And there is a variant from Palestine and Jordan and Lebanon, etc. In Egypt, they call it the Galabiya. In Middle East, they call it Dishdasha. In North Africa, they have a variant called the Jilaba. And the Jilaba is kind of cool because it has a hoodie attached to it. And it is very reminiscent of what the Jawas wear in Star Wars. I believe that George Lucas actually took inspiration for the way the Jawas are dressed from the Jilaba. The Jilaba is worn in Libya, in Algeria, and in Morocco, but I believe it originated in Morocco. I'm sure somebody is going to correct me in the comments. That's just all I know about it. It's kind of cool. I wish I had one. I'm going to try to find a really cool one that I found, and I'll place it, and you guys can drool over it just like I will. After the thawb, over it, actually, the overgarment for that is the jubba. And the jubba is kind of like the cool outer garment that Neo wore in The Matrix. It's kind of very cool. And it is an A line garment that is very well known. It's kind of associated with the Azharis who wear the jubba over their thawb. So they would wear a thawb and a jubba on top of it, and that is considered the Azhari uniform, and it's very cool. I think it's very cool. The Prophet ﷺ was known to travel wearing the jubba. So he'd have the thawb underneath, he would have the jubba on top, and and they would be long sleeve, and he would ride. The next article of clothing is also an outer garment, and it is called the burda. And the burda is also an outer garment. It's usually a bit thicker, and he would actually wear it and sleep in it. I believe the burda in the Middle East is for men called the abaya. And the abaya, because I lived in Kuwait for a few years, this is what the men wear on top of their thawb. The women have their own abaya. It's a female abaya, and it has the same name, but it's a different article of clothing, more flowing, more modest, completely covers the woman from top to bottom, and it's specific to women. After that, obviously, there's something specific to women, something called the jilbab. So the jilbab is again a covering for women that it kind of includes the hijab. So it's a all in one piece. It includes the hijab and covers the body as well. After that comes the izar, and the izar, I don't know if you've seen the short that I recorded previously where I call it the Islamic kilt. But yeah, the izar is also called the sarong in Southeast Asia. It includes Indonesia and Malaysia and Pakistan and India. All of these countries have the sarong and they wear it. However, in the Middle East, there is a variant that the Prophet ﷺ used to wear, and it's called the izar, and it wraps around the waist and covers the bottom. The Prophet also ﷺ used to wear something called a sirwal, and the sirwal is basically pants. They're kind of like trousers, but they don't have zippers. It's just basically a pair of trousers that would be worn underneath your thawb. They are still worn until today by the majority of the Middle Eastern countries, and as well as in Egypt and in Palestine and Lebanon and Syria. However, in Lebanon and Syria and in Iraq, actually, they are kind of baggy. They're more of a cultural thing where they're really baggy on top and then they kind of taper towards the bottom, towards the ankle. And finally, the final article of clothing is the Prophet ﷺ's leather socks, which are called the khuf. Prophet ﷺ used to wear the khuf all the time. And it's a very difficult article of clothing for you to find outside of the Middle East. Many of the Sahaba used to wear them, and so did the Prophet ﷺ.